Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you about something that goes to the heart of human closeness and connection. Not the dramatic expressions of love, not the poetic scenes we watch in movies, but something quieter, more natural, and yet far more powerful. I'm speaking about the physical language of touch, and more specifically, how a woman's touch can awaken something deep, instinctive, and emotional in a man. Like when you rest your hand on a man's chest during moments of closeness. It's not just a cute or pretty gesture. It's one of the most personal and ancient signs of trust, acceptance, and emotional closeness. The chest, especially the area over the heart, is packed with sensitive nerve endings that respond to warmth, gentle pressure, and soft movement. When your hand gently lands there, calm and deliberate, you're not just touching skin, you're connecting to the emotional and physical core of the man in front of you. You're sending a signal his body picks up on before his mind even tries to explain it. In a man's body, touch in this area does more than feel nice. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the one that helps relax the body, reduce stress hormones like cortisol, and shift the body into a healing state. And it's in this peaceful state that oxytocin gets released. Oxytocin is a hormone made in the hypothalamus and released by the back part of the pituitary gland. People often call it the love hormone because it plays a key role in bonding between mothers and babies, romantic connection, and emotional comfort. But what's really important when it comes to men is that this kind of touch doesn't just release oxytocin, it also helps release vasopressin, a hormone tied to male bonding, loyalty, and protection. Oxytocin makes people feel close and warm emotionally. Vasopressin, on the other hand, is more tied to male-type bonding behaviors. It influences how men commit, guard, and stay loyal to a partner. Studies in neuroscience show that men with higher vasopressin levels are more likely to act protectively and remain faithful to their partners. So when you rest your hand on his chest during a quiet moment, whether you're hugging him after a hard day, lying next to him in silence, or just helping him stay present, you are working with both systems at once. You're soothing his body and also helping build a deeper emotional tie in the relationship. You're reminding him that you're not just physically near him, but emotionally reliable too. Now think about what happens when you do this while he's feeling fragile, tired, unsure, or under pressure. The effect becomes even more powerful. Men are often not allowed by society to fall apart, to admit they're tired, or to show weakness. But when you touch him like this, you give him something rare. You give him rest. You're not asking him to perform, to be strong, or to be on. You're offering him a pause. And that tells his body, you're safe now, you're seen, you're enough. That kind of message runs deeper than compliments or kind words. It's a physical form of emotional connection. What makes this kind of touch stand out isn't just where it lands, it's how it's done. A hand on his chest should be steady enough to ground him, but soft enough to comfort. It should never feel rushed. It should never feel automatic. The true magic comes from the presence behind it. It has to be intentional. When your hand rests there, it should say, I'm here, right now, with you. Not just in body, but in thought, in emotion, in spirit. That kind of presence turns a simple touch into a message. And that message helps a man feel tied not just to his partner, but to a version of love that feels real, lasting, and emotionally safe. This kind of touch becomes even more powerful when it's repeated. One moment may relax him, but many moments begin to form an emotional pattern. If he starts to link your touch with a sense of peace, understanding, and connection, he'll start looking for it. Not just the touch itself, but the deeper comfort it brings. Your presence becomes his safe space, his emotional home, the place where his guard can fall. This is how small physical acts turn into powerful emotional signals in a man's mind. This is how a man, often raised to hide emotion, starts to open up, not because of long talks, debates, or reasons, but through a steady physical message that says, "You don't have to earn love here." In relationships where emotional comfort often takes a backseat to passion or appearance, this gentle, honest touch stands out. It isn't a request. It isn't a hint at anything more. It's a calm message. You don't have to prove your worth. You already have it. When a man starts to believe this, his body begins to change. It swaps anxiety for peace. It changes how he sees closeness, not as something full of pressure, but as something full of calm. And the more he experiences that through you, the more he connects, not out of neediness, but out of true emotional desire. This simple gesture becomes especially meaningful when done in silence. That silence sharpens awareness. It creates a moment that feels sacred. In those silent seconds, your hand on his chest becomes something like a quiet promise. I see you. I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. You don't have to say it. You don't have to explain it. The body understands. The memory gets saved. And later, when he's going through something difficult, or when he feels disconnected, that memory will come back. Not just in his thoughts, but in his body. He'll remember the calm, the safety, the bond, and he'll want to return to it. Not just in theory, but with every fiber of his being. This is one of the strongest ways to touch a man and bring out his love chemicals, not through seduction, not through excitement, but through quiet presence and real emotional touch. It seems small, but it leaves a mark. And it's that mix of simplicity and meaning that makes it unforgettable. Running your fingers through a man's hair or softly across his scalp is another deeply emotional and natural form of closeness. It might look like a small act, maybe even playful, but underneath it creates a powerful mix of biological and emotional effects. People are naturally wired to respond to gentle, caring touch, and the scalp is one of the most sensitive areas for this. For men, this kind of touch hits differently. It avoids the need for words or explanations and goes straight to the nervous system with a message. You're okay, you're known, you're safe. The scalp is filled with special nerve endings that react to soft pressure and slow strokes. When you move your fingers through his hair calmly and slowly, it activates those nerves and sends peaceful signals throughout his body. It encourages the release of oxytocin and often dopamine, the hormone linked to joy and reward. But it also shifts the whole system into a calmer mode. His heart rate eases, stress drops. The body leaves the fight or flight state and enters a place of comfort and openness. What makes this touch so important for men is how rare it often is. Women typically receive caring touch in childhood, in friendships, and in emotional times. Men often don't. Many are taught to ignore their need for comfort and to avoid showing emotion, even though deep down they need it just as much. So when a woman gently touches a man's head in a quiet and private moment, it can feel overwhelming in the best way. His body, starved for affection, responds strongly. It feels strange because it doesn't happen often, but it also feels familiar. Because somewhere inside, his brain remembers what it feels like to be comforted. This kind of gesture links back to ancient bonding behaviors. Grooming, for example, is something seen in nearly all primates. It's not just for cleaning. It builds trust, creates social bonds, and shows care. In our modern lives, touching a partner's hair carries some of that same meaning. It tells him, "You matter. I see you. I'm touching you not to get something, but just to be close." It creates a moment where both people start to feel connected. Her peace spreads to him. Her love becomes a feeling, not just a thought. The head also holds special meaning. It's where his mind, his face, his identity lives. So when someone touches his head with care, it feels more personal. It says, "I value you, not just for what you do, but for who you are." That creates a feeling that stays with him. He may never talk about it, but he'll remember it. It becomes part of his idea of what it means to feel truly loved. And unlike other kinds of touch that may seem sexual or goal-driven, this kind is slow, relaxed, and asks for nothing. That alone makes it powerful. In a world that constantly pushes men to perform, protect, and prove themselves, this simple gesture gives them a break. It says, "You can rest now, just be." When this touch is done regularly and with care, it does more than soothe. It builds emotional strength. And for men, especially those who don't often feel safe enough to be vulnerable, that's where true connection starts. The hormones released, oxytocin, dopamine, and less cortisol, build a strong emotional memory. His mind links the touch with peace and safety. Over time, he begins to feel closer to the person giving it, not because of huge romantic actions, but because of small, meaningful moments that change his inner world. Your fingers through his hair become a comfort signal, a memory he reaches for when life feels heavy. Men who receive this kind of touch regularly often say they feel more open, more trusting, and more connected to their partners. Why? Because their bodies start to trust. And when the body trusts, the heart begins to open too. Emotional safety isn't just an idea. It's something physical. It's something felt. And running your hand through his hair, when done with love and real presence, is one of the strongest ways to help that feeling grow. Activation works in a cumulative way. Every instance builds on the one before. A man might not comment on the gesture at the time. He might not express how deeply it affects him, but his nervous system keeps track. It holds on to each moment of calm, each drop in tension, each wave of warmth, and stores it as proof that this relationship is a safe place. Over time, that changes not just how he feels, but also how he chooses. It shapes his readiness to give more, to open up, to stay emotionally close, even when life gets overwhelming or unclear. This is the quiet strength of a simple gesture repeated with genuine care. A slow, loving movement of your fingers through his hair becomes more than just physical contact. It becomes a form of communication, one that slips past mental walls and reaches his deepest self. When used often, it doesn't just create closeness, it builds real emotional loyalty, rooted in calm, in being present, and in deep emotional truth. Placing your hands gently on a man's face is a gesture that goes beyond words. It speaks in a deep primal language the nervous system knows instantly as a sign of kindness, respect, and focus. The face might be the most emotionally expressive part of a person. It's home to the eyes, the mouth, and the muscles that show how we feel. When someone touches it with care and purpose, the message isn't about control or demand. It's about acknowledgement. You're not just touching skin, you're touching his identity. That's why this kind of gesture reaches so deeply into a man's emotional world, unlocking hormone and brain responses that most other touches can't. The structure of the face is built to be very sensitive. The skin on the cheeks, around the jaw, on the temples and forehead is thin and packed with nerves. These nerves send signals directly to the limbic system, the brain's emotional center, letting facial touch trigger strong feelings of comfort, safety, and being seen. When a woman places her hands on a man's face, especially during intimate or vulnerable moments, she activates this full emotional and chemical response. His body releases oxytocin, the hormone that helps bonding, along with endorphins that ease stress and create a feeling of emotional safety. In that moment, his mental guard starts to come down. Not because he makes a decision to let go, but because his body allows it. He gets the message. You're not being judged, you're being accepted. That matters deeply, because many men have been taught to receive affection only when they've performed, achieved, or given something. But when his face is held softly, without needing to do anything, he doesn't feel like a tool. He feels like a person. This shift affects how he values himself, not as someone who must prove his worth, but as someone already worthy of full attention and care. This gesture also echoes the first kinds of affection many people received as babies, not in a childish or belittling way, but in the most basic sense of safety and love, without judgment. As infants, many of us were touched like this, during feeding, during sleep, during times of comfort. The body remembers those early experiences even when the adult mind forgets. So when a partner touches a man's face that way, it wakes up something ancient in him. His body recognizes the message. This was what trust used to feel like. Before we even knew what words were, this was what safety meant before we could name it. And the emotions that follow are usually deeper and more honest than anything he could say out loud. This kind of gesture becomes even more powerful when it's paired with steady eye contact. Eye contact alone can trigger oxytocin, especially when both people are emotionally open. But when you add a touch to the face, the experience becomes full body. It floods his senses with a feeling of being truly seen, not just glanced at, but deeply noticed. This kind of attention disarms him in the best way. It encourages him to drop his guard, step out of his usual tension, and let closeness in without trying to manage or escape it. In many relationships, especially long-term ones, physical touch can become routine or focused only on goals. That's why something as simple and slow as cupping the face carries so much meaning. It interrupts the automatic habits. It brings both people back to the moment. It asks for nothing except connection. And for many men, that's a rare invitation. The message is not "show me you love me," but "let me love you." And for a lot of men, receiving love is harder than giving it. It takes trust, it takes letting go, and it takes accepting that who they are, not just what they do, is valuable. The face also carries the emotional masks men are trained to wear. Society teaches many men to appear strong, confident, and unaffected. That often shows in how tightly they control their facial expressions. When you softly hold his face, you give him permission to relax that mask, to let his guard down, to just be. That moment of softening is beautiful, not because it makes him weak, but because it reminds him that real strength includes vulnerability, that both sides, toughness and tenderness, can exist at the same time in the same place. Touching his face also brings him back into the present. It pulls him out of his thoughts and into the moment, into his body, into the connection. It's nowhere to hide in a touch like that. That's part of what makes it so powerful. It creates stillness. The rest of the world fades away. There are just two people, eyes locked. One person holding the other's face, not to control it, but to honor it. And often no words are needed. Silence can make the moment stronger. because the nervous system listens more closely without noise. And what it hears is something like, "You matter to me. I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere." The hormonal response that follows oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins does more than make him feel good for a moment. It starts building emotional wiring in the brain. The brain stores this memory as a model for what real love and safety feel like. And the more often that model gets reinforced with real, intentional touch, the more it becomes part of him. Love becomes not just an idea or a task, but a real felt experience in the body. When a man is touched like this, when his face is held not to be judged but to be appreciated, he doesn't forget it. His body, more truthful than his thoughts, locks onto that moment. Later, when he feels lost or distant, that memory becomes a place he'll want to come back to. Not out of neediness, but because it reminded him of something honest, something deep, something he may not have realized he needed. Holding a man's hand in a quiet, focused moment is one of the simplest yet most meaningful things you can do. To someone watching, it might look like a small act, just another casual way two people show affection. But underneath it is a deep exchange of signals, emotional, nervous, and unspoken. Hands are not just for doing tasks. They're filled with nerve endings that constantly send messages to the brain. And when one hand meets another with warmth and steadiness, something inside responds. Not with words, but with a feeling of trust. The palms are especially sensitive. They have sensors that react to touch, pressure, temperature. When a man's hand is held by someone he cares about, those sensors light up. His brain shifts into a state of peace, switching from stress mode to calm connection. This hand-holding triggers a release of bonding hormones like oxytocin and mood-balancing ones like serotonin. It pulls him out of thinking and into feeling. If done with presence, hand-holding becomes a quiet way of saying, "You're safe here." For many men, this kind of simple touch carries more weight than they might admit. In a world that expects them to stay strong, productive, and emotionally quiet, being held gently in this way is like being given permission to stop performing. A woman who takes his hand slowly, without tension or rush, sends his nervous system a message. You're okay just as you are. That message is rare. It eases the heavy pressure that often forces men into roles instead of relationship. The gesture becomes a moment of shared being. Two people not chasing anything, just existing together. What makes it powerful isn't just the way it feels, it's the attention behind it. A hand held out of habit doesn't hold much emotional energy, but a hand held with real presence, maybe followed by a look or a pause, cuts through the noise. The part of the brain that stores emotional memory begins to link that touch with the feeling of being cared for. Over time, these links grow stronger. Love becomes less of a thought and more of a physical truth stored in his body. In many cultures, holding hands is the first kind of public closeness couples show. It signals connection, not ownership, but choice. I want to stand with you. I want to be seen with you. I want to connect with you in the open. That message is powerful, especially for a man taught to stay independent. When you take his hand with care, he may feel a softening deep inside, not because he's being weak, but because he's being reminded he's worth loving, worth staying close to, even in silence. The hand has many tiny muscles and bones all working together to create a grip that can be strong or soft. When your fingers wrap around his, when your thumb lightly brushes his skin, something meaningful is exchanged. That exchange says, "You're not alone. What you carry, I see. I share this moment with you." He doesn't just feel touch, he feels noticed, valued. Not just someone who provides, but someone who receives love too. The way you hold his hand, how tight, how loose, when and why, becomes part of your shared emotional history. A light squeeze during a tough time might say more than 100 words. A still, quiet hold might say, "I'm not leaving." These wordless gestures add depth to your bond. His body will remember them, because while his mind might analyze, his senses feel deeply. He'll store those touches as proof of connection, of loyalty, of care. There's something deeply human about holding hands. It marks a shift into closeness, into emotional openness. And for a man who might be used to earning touch instead of simply receiving it, having his hand held gently and with love is a powerful moment. It helps him redefine what love really is. Not something he has to work for, but something that arrives quietly, stays sincerely, and doesn't ask for anything in return.